funny, she's smart, she craves chocolate every day, and she is the Greek goddess of comedy. Here is your host, Ellen Karas.
Our first sponsor is Baywalk Marketing. Go to their website, baywalk.net, for all of your advertising and marketing needs. They can help you post the right wording on social media for your business. They can help you analyze the demographics of your business. They're also experts in the Greek community. Go to their website, hollywoodgreeks.com, for all of your Greek entertainment needs, and those will be coming soon. Also, HellenicFestivals.org to find out where there is a Greek festival near you. Now, maybe not this summer, but absolutely in September. Listen, nothing's going to stop the Greeks but from having their festival. Trust me on this. Also, our other sponsor, Select Flex. What is it? It's an orthotic. What's an orthotic? Well, it's also called an insert, and you put it in your shoe. It helps you with foot support, ankle, your knees, back, your entire alignment. And let me tell you what's different about these orthotics versus other ones that you find over the counter. There is an adjustability in the arch, and you can make the arch firm, or extra firm, depending on what your needs are. I use these for all of my workouts or for walking. I never leave home without these in my sneakers, my Uggs, my boots. I'm telling you right now, folks, just try them. And let me tell you something else too. There's a 25% discount for Kara's Comedy Corner listeners. So go to their website, selectflex.com, selectflex.com. Type in the code FAMILY25, because you're like my family, FAMILY 25, and you're going to get a 25% discount. They have a video on the website. You can see how these work. I'm telling you, these are fantastic and so much cheaper than buying custom. So try these out, selectflex.com.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Karas' Comedy Corner. My name is Ellen Karas, and we're doing it again, Zooming. It's the new way. At some point, I'm hoping this will be the old way, and then we'll go back to what the old way was, and we'll call that the new way. Either way, I am happy to be here, and I am thrilled about the guest that we have today, because he's been on my I want you to come on my show list, but he's always very busy. And the one good thing about this is that it has allowed people's schedules to be a little bit more flexible. Obviously, I wish all of this didn't happen for that to happen. But since it did happen, I'm getting a lot of more like, yeah, I could definitely come on. So I guess that's good. So I should try to get that all in before we go back to the old way, which will be the new way, which is what I was just talking about. So I love our guest. I consider him a friend. He is truly one of the funniest comedians out there, but my respect for him is so high because he's laughing, but I'm going to tell you why. Because he writes so much. And I think that to have that discipline as a comic, which I realize is like what you're supposed to do, but not necessarily everybody has the discipline to do it. Sometimes they do it on the fly. But I love Joe because he's always prepared. He's always writing new material. I've worked with him for years. It's never really the same show ever. And he's very smart. And I love talking to him off stage as well. He has been on the Late Late Show with Craig Ferguson. He was on Last Comic Standing. He does privates, clubs all over the U.S. And I really think that he is one of the smartest comics around. So welcome my guest, Joe DeVito.
I'm shocked that people are shocked that vaping is not good for you. Really, that was surprising. Like, what? You're trying to tell me sucking down this burning liquid air freshener is not good for me? Is that, what? But I bought it at the gas station. What do you mean? He's not a doctor, the guy who sold me the refill and the beef jerky? I thought he was a medical professional. I can't believe it's bad for me, that pina colada scented plume of steam I barf out every couple of seconds. Yes. Nothing is good for you if you can charge it off a USB port. No one has ever said, can I borrow your laptop? I want to plug in this asparagus here. It's, Hi. I feel like it's going to be such a letdown, whatever I say after that, but thank you for that wonderful ego-boosting intro.
I mean it. You're great. Oh, and all of your appearances also, I'm sorry to be remiss, on a Fox News channel. We'll get into that as well.
Sure.
I have some questions about that because when you say
Okay.
Fox News, people go a little cuckoo.
Mm-hmm.
So just, first of all, you look great. I thought you were growing a beard. I
did. I had a beard for a while, and I cut it off, and actually Zoom inspired me to do that. Because I noticed that the gray had spread from this white tennis ball I had on my chin, and that it had spread throughout my face, and I really was not aware of it, and that it kind of bothered me. So what I did was I cut off the beard, and I've done a terrible sort of institutional self-haircut, if you can see. And what I've done is I've done some ethnic cleansing of any gray hair that was on my body from the neck up. I've gotten rid of it. I just eliminated it. So that's,
haircut, that is not a haircut that I would match with you, because it's
with good reason.
It's sort of like somebody that would skateboard, and, right, and just have a whole different way of listen to different music than I think you listen to, watch. Yeah,
it's turning into a very early 90s mall rat, mushroom-headed child's haircut.
Right. I can't talk to you all day because I just love your description. This is what I'm saying, ladies and gentlemen. See, exactly. That's
we have our fun.
Joe, this is it's just he's not. What I love about you is you're not trying to be on. This is you. This is the way that you think, and it's great. And you've managed to make a living doing it as well. So
we'll see about that.
I know. We're all crazy. But before we get into all that, though, I do want to find out, because I ask everybody, how'd you get into stand-up? You're from Connecticut, number one, right? Connecticut. You grew up in Connecticut?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. At which town was that?
Yes, my family moved there when a town called New Milford.
New Milford.
It's up by Danbury. Yeah, and my family moved us there. I was about a year old. I was actually born in Manhattan, and we're from the Bronx, and my folks were kind of looking for a way where two kids from the Bronx who'd gotten married and, of course, didn't have a college education could get a better life for the families, and they moved us there. And then I moved to Long Island to take a corporate job. It's at least 20 years ago, probably like 22 years ago, and I've been here ever since.
So you went to you have a degree, a college degree? Okay.
Yeah, I went to Fairfield University in Connecticut, and I have a degree in English. But actually, what I think the main value I got out of high school, of college, other than it was like a holding pen for me to finish going through puberty, which was necessary. But I wrote for, and I was the editor of the school newspaper, and that's where I really felt like, oh, I'm a writer, and I like having an audience. And I didn't realize that was such a big part of my personality until years later when I started doing stand-up. I was surprised by the number of people who told me, oh, we always knew you were going to do something like this, which it never occurred to me to be a stand-up comic.
You were into wrestling in high school, right? And
yes,
course,
I was.
I know that because I watched your show, and go see, and you have to go see Joe's show. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I was a very poor quality high school wrestler. I was the first time I'd ever tried to do anything athletic. I was not an athletic kid. I was a bookworm. I'm not sure what the kids are called now who are like that, but it was very weird when I was growing up. As a 28-year-old male, can you imagine if I try to pull that bullshit off? But when I was growing up, if you didn't like cars or sports, you were in a lot of trouble.
Right.
Because there was no internet, and there was, it wasn't until I got to junior high school where you could get into music. That was my thing. And then in high school, I found some of the the kindred spirits that way. But for some reason, I remember being in a gym class, and I just was awful at everything. I just didn't care. And it was always some gym teacher throwing a ball at my head and just people pummeling me. And we did wrestling one day, and I was not horrible at it. And I thought, okay. So then in high school, I got into it. I think if I had another year, I could have been all right, but I was good on junior varsity. But it got me interested in exercise, which is something that for many years, I think before I started doing stand-up, that's what I was obsessed with. I competed in powerlifting. I was a competitive weightlifter. And now I'd say it's one of the things that's helping me get through this pandemic is that at least I have that love of exercise that you needed to keep from going insane.
Right. Plus, you have to take care of yourself. We've had exercise conversations. Like you and I are about like clean eating and, trying to take care of ourselves and not to slam anybody, but a little bit different than some of the other comics that'll be eating, chicken wings and they're on their third drink. You and I are a little more simpatico. It's, because we believe in taking care of ourselves and
although it's funny, it's as you get older, it's almost like as you get older, it's not an optional thing. It almost is like this weird hostage situation where you have to do it just to be able to function. And especially with when I was on the road a lot, I see Facebook is so good at sending you those memory photos. And I look and I'm like, my God, look at how fat my face was. Because my first year of working the road, you're eating wings and burgers at 11:30. You're eating comedy club food. No one getting a free meal is going to say, hit me with that salad. You're going to say, bring me the fat and the salt and the potatoes.
Really
and
cheap.
yeah. And the only thing I can say is it's good that I was not a young guy who liked to party when I started stand-up. That was already out of my system. But life on the road, I noticed I was starting to drink. And I said, I'm putting a squelch on this. So one of the things I would like to do on the road is find where the crappy local $5 a day gym is. And I would go in and spend the Saturday at the squat rack. And that was, for me, that was thrilled. That was my idea of other guys who would be out on the road getting drunk and trying to get laid after. For me, it was, no, I got to go to bed. Tomorrow's a squat day.
Mm-hmm. I love that. I mean, although if an attractive woman that was interesting came your way, I'm assuming you would have prolonged the conversation.
I'm not saying it hasn't happened.
Right. Okay, good.
Usually, you know what? I've been notoriously clueless in that department where the usual situation is the woman will walk away and the other comic will punch me in the arm and say, what are you doing? That woman is hitting on you. And I'd say, oh, okay. I was thinking about tomorrow's squat workout.
Listen, you have your priorities. You
are
very disciplined. You are very, very disciplined.
Yeah.
So let's just go back for a second.
Okay.
So what were your intention? You went to Fairfield, which is a great college, a great university, and you got an English degree. What were you going to do with that? What was the plan at that moment?
I had no clue. No clue.
Okay.
I was not a good planner when I was young, and I graduated in 1990 and we were just heading into a recession. So there were not jobs out there, but I was going back to home, my parents' house in a small town. I was starting to grow my hair out. I knew I was not going to have the kind of career path that a lot of my friends did who, if they had an accounting degree, they spent the last half of their senior year of college going on interviews. For me, I didn't know what that place was for me, but I ended up getting a job for a little PR agency out of a woman's house. I did that for about a year and a half. Then I had grown my hair so long, I was not just unemployed, I was almost unemployable. And I moved in with some friends. I was playing guitar in some rock bands. I was working at a video store part-time. I was selling weed to make some ends meet. And I did that until I realized that I wasn't going to be a rock star. And then I cut my hair off, moved back in with my parents for a year, and then got jobs doing corporate writing. And that's what brought me to New York. And then a couple of years of doing that, I realized I still had this creative itch to be funny that wasn't getting scratched.
Mm-hmm. So what was the momentous occasion? How did you get to that open mic, or did you have a friend who was a comedian?
No. I took a 1-day writing class through Gotham Writers Group, taught by Dave LaBarca, who still teaches the class, and this is 20 years ago. And it was how to write for stand-up comedy. And I took the 1-day workshop, but I was too afraid to go on stage. So I didn't do anything after that. But what I was doing was I was doing some journalism on the side, apart from my job writing advertising. And I was at a strip club one night, and they had a free magazine. So what a nerd I am, even at a strip club, I think it was something I can read later. So I brought the magazine home, and it was just really a vehicle for selling ads for other strip-related business, I guess. But they said, we're looking for a humor columnist. So I said, oh, and I emailed them, and I became, under a fake name, the humor columnist for this girly magazine. And friends of mine would email those around, and people would read them, and they were funny. You know, I knew how to write something. If you read it, you'd laugh. I didn't know how to perform it, but I knew how to put the words together. And then my coworkers one day, just hanging out, telling stories about my family, they said, you have to try stand-up comedy. So I bought one of those. I think it was either Learning Annex or Seminar Center. Do you remember they used to have the kiosks on the street in Manhattan, and you'd go through a catalog?
Absolutely. I went to a couple of those Learning Annex.
Yeah, and it was how to do stand-up comedy. Right. Yeah, but it would be like talk to your dead pets and learn real estate from, a psychic. It was nonsense. But it was,
well,
I think, 3 classes.
I was single at the time, so it was how to meet a man. There was a lot of how to meet things.
Yeah. So this class, I think, was 3 classes and then a graduation show for like $70. And a friend from work took it with me to make sure I would go, because my stage fright was so bad that even, you recall the second room at New York Comedy Club. Do you remember the hallway?
Yeah, the little room.
Yeah, it was a crawl space.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And they would do shows in there. And I remember being in there with the 8 other students and having to go into the bathroom and throw up. So nervous just from talking to 8 other students in a class. But I survived the graduation show. And I remember thinking this was very interesting. So I started to do the amateur shows. I started to do some of the open mics. I was working in Manhattan at the time, so I would do my corporate job, then go to the open mics. And then I guess it was about 2 years into stand-up, the company that I was working for moved their offices to Long Island. So I was back on Long Island. And I remember thinking, I think I want to be a stand-up comic for real. And I was in my mid-30s at the time, so I wasn't a kid. And then I got laid off, and I thought, okay, I guess I'm going to be a stand-up comic. So I did freelance writing for a little while, and I paid my dues. And then the big break was Last Comic Standing in 2007. And that's what I was able, with the heat off of that, I was able to go pro. And I have not had to have a regular job since then.
So I remember us having a conversation in the green room at Governor's.
Yeah.
And we were talking about Last Comic, and I was so happy you got on and you got to perform for such a wider audience. We were talking about the power of television. Yeah. And this is before Netflix and Amazon Prime. So, we were
the only way.
Right. I mean, I we were past the 3 channels and just HBO and Showtime. We were in the midpoint. But people were still watching enough TV. And you were in what season were you in exactly?
I was season 5, and I made the semifinals. So that means out of all the people they looked at, that was the year they went to the main English-speaking countries. So it was America, Canada, Australia, and the UK. And out of all those people, I made the top 32. It was not bad.
Mm-hmm. No, it's great. Yeah. And I remember I was asking you because I just love to interview people no matter what. And I said, what was it like? And what difference did it make for you? And I remember you saying how you will get recognized, and you were like at the airport and somebody said something to you, that type of thing. I mean, also the work increased somewhat, but it was that recognition, part that was, different.
Yeah, that part was weird. because in 2006, I did a show on Comedy Central called Live at Gotham, which was the successor to Premium Blend, which was a showcase show. A bunch of comics go up and do their 7-minute set or whatever it was. And I also did the Montreal Comedy Festival that year, which is kind of a big deal in the business. But neither of those particularly changed my life. And I remember auditioning for Last Comic Standing and going back to my temp job, my freelance job. And when I was doing the audition, I did a bunch of office jokes. And one of the judges said, "Oh, did you used to work in an office?" And I said, "I'm on lunch. I have to go back." So I had TV credits at that time. And I remember going back to the office and the people I work with saying, "So how did your thing go?" Which if you are a performer in New York, people say that. How did your thing go? How did your skit go?
My family says that, by the way.
Yeah. And I remember saying, they asked me to come back tonight, so I think it went pretty well. And then I did that. And I'd have to say that was a particularly high point in my life because, you know me, neurotic, like a lot of comics. But I remember coming off that stage thinking, I don't know what's going to happen, but I did the best I'm capable of doing right now. And it was a pretty cool feeling that whatever my ceiling was, I hit it. And then when they brought us back to announce who was moving on, I thought, well, they're going to say my name. And then they said a different comic. And I thought, well, I must be next. And they said somebody else. I thought, well, I must be next. And I think like the fourth name was me. But as great as that is, then I went to LA and I was maxed out on whatever my 6 years in the game. And I didn't have a good set and it was a tough crowd and I didn't advance. And it's so funny because when there's the 32 of you, everyone talks to you as you're all equals and they're shooting all the B-roll and the interviews and this and that. And the moment they decided who the other 10 were, it was like, hit the bricks, scumbags. I was like, wow, we're now in a different category. But I came home and I was very bummed because they build you up and they shoot all this B-roll and you think, oh, I'm going to be the star of this show. And then you're back home. But it was Mike Bichetti who'd done it the year before. And I ran into him at a club and there's a lag from when they tape to when it would air. And he said, it's going to be great. He said, people are going to come up to you on the street and recognize you. And I said, come on, man, no one's going to give a shit. And then when it aired, it was weird. It was weird. I remember being in, you remember Ha?
Yeah.
Comedy
Yes, totally.
Disgusting.
I have PTSDs about Ha.
Well, the show was airing, and of course, a couple of episodes air, and people don't know who's moving on because that a couple months lag. And they made me look really good, and I was funny in the interviews. And so I'm in this disgusting basement comedy club, and I'm sitting there eating a tuna fish sandwich, and this family comes in, and the son points to the board and says, "Oh, Joe DeVito's on the show. He's my favorite from last con." And I'm 5 feet away from them eating this, and I had to cover myself because I thought, no, I don't want them to see that this is what it's really like. That maybe with some pipe dripping on me, eating a sandwich as I run from unpaid spot to unpaid spot. But yeah, that exposure was enough to give my a recently hired manager the clout to say, road clubs, you got to book this guy, and that's the only way you can make a living. You can't make a living as an opening act. You have to get yourself into that closing spot on the road. Mm. And then that's when I became an actual working comic.
And do you do a lot of corporates because you worked in corporate America and you're a great writer and you can, because you're generally, you're clean.
Yeah.
I feel like in that way we're a bit of the same. You know what I'm saying? It's like, look, if I got to drop my F-bombs because everybody's from Hartford, we'll do that. You know what I'm talking about, what place I'm talking about. But I've done a lot of corporate stuff and I do the Greek shows obviously in a church. So clearly, but I've watched you many times in an atmosphere where we don't have any restrictions, and you're pretty much clean, other than for maybe a curse here and there.
Well, it depends on where you are, and I think being a professional writer helped me a lot with that because I had to write about a lot of boring stuff.
Hmm.
And if someone came in and gave, if I had to promote a product I thought was boring, I couldn't just say, this doesn't move me creatively. I would have gotten fired. So the way to make money is to do these private gigs and to do these corporate gigs, which usually have language concerns. And I just learned how to do it. And at first, it's a little tricky. If you're doing a family resort, and there's one family resort I worked all the time, and they would make me laugh. I'd come back and they would say to me, "Oh, just so you know, tonight is age 7 and up, not age 10 and up." And I would laugh. What adjustment do you think I make between 7 and 10? Like how finely tuned do you think that? But you learn. And for me, I would pride myself that you could bring me into an environment like that, and I would look out and I would see the parents, the kids, and the grandparents are all laughing. And I thought, well, I pulled off a hell of a trick to do that and still talk about things that I want to talk about. So to make a living, I learned to work clean, to do the private gigs. And then when I'm in a club, when you've come to see, if not me, comedians, then I can loosen up. But I see it all the time. I used to see it all the time with comics who, it wasn't just a language, but they were talking about just gross, unoriginal stuff. And then they would complain that they can't work. And if you'd say to them, but you're not doing anything anyone wants to pay for, they wouldn't compromise. And I thought it was very foolish.
Mm-hmm. I completely agree. We forget we are the product and we are selling ourselves. And you have to be able to make yourself into pretty much what it is that they want you to be. That doesn't mean that you lose all your creativity, of course, and you still are you and whatnot. But again, if there are parameters and you want the gig, you have to abide by that. If not, don't do it, because there's about 1,000 other people on the line that that will do it. So, but
exactly.
I mean, it's so you've been in this, you're probably almost on 20 years or so, right? 15, 20 years.
Yeah, actually it's going to be, it's May, isn't it? So next month will be 19 years.
So you and I are around the same-ish time.
Yeah.
And
where did we meet? Do you remember where we met? Was it at Governor's?
I'm thinking the Duplex. Because Poppy had her, rest in peace.
Yes.
Poppy had her Wednesday show, which was packed every night back then. And, she was the bartender and, MC. So I feel like I met you there. And I know that from the first time I saw you, and you come with your little, I'm trying to find a little notebook here, like a little, like you always have like a little, like a notebook this size or so. And I love that. I connected with you because I'm like that. Like you and I are students like that. And although I did have, by the way, that accounting degree, but still we're students like that. We study. And I'm also with the notebook and the writing and you were, and just your preparation. And I remember from the beginning, I was like, God, this guy's so funny, and look at how he writes. And you had a really great way with words, and it was you, and it all fit. Like you're authentic. You see what you get, and that's why I said off stage, it's a similar conversation. It's a different topic, but you still speak the same, and that's natural. That's a gift. And
see, I have to say, though, it's so interesting to hear you say that, because for me, the struggle has always been, I feel like I'm not doing enough, and that I'm not always close enough to being authentic. To me, those are the challenges, that to be on stage and feel like, am I being a phony? Like, that's something that I've always worried about. And I'm aware that that's in my head more than anywhere else, because the things you're saying to me, as wonderful as they are, I mean, I know I hear people say, oh, you're always writing. And I know that part's true, but I feel like I'm not writing enough. I'm not writing enough. I always want to, because to me, that's the real thrill, is when the new joke gets over. That's why and I'm sure you see this too, the people go up and they're telling these jokes from 30 years ago. And I think, what do you get out of it? You already know that works. Everybody, like, But yeah, you and I are because we're grinders. We know that you have to grind to achieve something.
Right.
And if I think if I knew every time I was going to go on stage, everything I said, people were going to laugh hysterically, I think I would just go do something else.
Hmm.
What's the value of that? What do
Well,
you think?
it's every show is different. You can
Yeah.
go up. You could be dressed the same. You could have done
Yeah.
the 8 o'clock show and then the 10
Yes.
o'clock
Yes.
show. Okay.
In the same town.
Same thing. All you do,
Yeah.
it was just 2 hours apart. You're going to do
Yeah.
the same set. You got the same set of comics. Everything is the same. The food out there is the same. Everything is the same. And it could be a completely different experience. That
Yeah.
to me is the thrill of it. And that's also the scariest part of it. And
Yeah.
it's all about never knowing how it's going to end up. You don't know. We both know. We've gone to gigs. We're like, oh, they're going to love me. They're from here. I'm from there.
Yeah.
I'm Greek, Italian, what up, and then it's like, not. I mean, now our bad shows are now not the laughs that we want,
Yes.
But
Yeah.
back in the day, it was like the crickets. But and then you can walk in, you don't feel prepared. When we do longer shows, like an hour, again, when it's sort of revolved around us, and
Yeah.
like, oh my God, all this material, I want to start this new stuff, this, that, whatever. And then when you bang it out of the park and you've gotten this great reception, it really, truly is the greatest feeling in the world. So
Yeah.
I say this all the time when people talk about stand-up and to civilians, it's impressive, right? It's like, oh my God, you do stand up and this and that. And I probably like you, because we're humble, I also try to downplay it. Like, I try to tell people it's a lot of work. There's a lot of rejection, just to kind of keep the expectations, at bay, you know what I mean? So they understand.
Yeah.
And
Well, I'm amazed that it ever works.
that's a great,
I mean, just the idea that a person is going to stand and talk,
right.
and it's going to make people have a physical response. It's like, imagine if you said something that made a whole room of people who don't know each other sneeze at the same time. You'd think, well, that's a hell of a trick. It's not too different than when a comic manipulates words and gets over like that.
But I think also we're lucky because there's so many great people that came before us that now it's natural. You know what I mean? If we were the first ones doing it, then I don't know how that was going to work out. But the groundwork for that has already been laid out. So I think that part, worked in our favor.
Yeah.
But it is hard. And so when people meet you, they think, oh my God, and you're, and like you're a star, and which I find very uncomfortable. It's like, I am an entertainer. I want to be paid to entertain. And I tell people too, this isn't, if you want to be famous, forget about it. And you have to love it. If you don't love this and find something in it, whatever it is, then you need to go to therapy. And you need to go to a career counselor. You can't. This isn't about that. And I do. I have to admit this. I do get sometimes a little perturbed, and I try not to, because it's a free country, and I believe in that. But when I see people that have been doing this a long time, when 10 plus or 15 years, and they've either sort of like never found their way, or for whatever the reason is, everybody's got different circumstances. And sometimes I'm like, you're taking up the space, and stage space is very precious. And I realize that you have the right, but at this point, I mean, I made a promise to myself that I would look back each year, and as long as I was progressing, that was not necessarily financial, but as long as I was, which was very hard in my accounting brain, okay, because my accounting brain and my stand-up brain are always fighting. They're always fighting. But if I was progressing as a comic and felt better, and I was getting better, then I will continue to do this for as long as I feel I want to do it. But if I felt like I was at a standstill for a super long period of time, I mean, we all get
Yeah.
stuck and we get our writer's block and all that other kind of stuff, then I really need to reevaluate, because it's hard. The traveling, the getting the gigs. And I tell people too, 90%, especially at the level that we're at, 90% of it is the business side, right? I remember Joe Starr saying it's show business for a reason. He told that to me a long time ago. And that business part is 90%, the negotiation. And I've never had a manager. I've had managers book me, I've had bookers book me, but I do everything myself. You know, the contracts, the money. That's the worst. What's my stuff? What's my worth? It's not like, that car is, $30,000. I mean,
there's no blue book.
There's no blue book. Exactly. There's no blue. There's nothing. I mean, there's, I'm not putting myself in this category, but there's Sebastian Maniscalco's price, there's my price, and it's just so different. And that is hard. And that's really why you need, to me, why having a manager and having a good manager is really they earn their keep, because that to me is the hard, no matter how much confidence you have in yourself. Because what happens is, even if you have a lot of confidence, then you can say, well, I'm worth this. And then the client can be like, no. And then that's it. So you've gone from zero to whatever it is that you think it is. So I think that part is very, very hard. But the stage part is the fun part. That's the easier part.
Well, it's the part I agree with you. And there have been comics I've seen who are working comics who are good. And I see them show up at the club and they're in a bad mood, and they perform and they come off stage and they're in a bad mood. And I feel sorry for them, because if you can't enjoy the time when you're on stage, then it just becomes all that other stuff. That 90% becomes 100%. And it's a business with a lot of heartbreak in it, because I don't think every person who's never done stand-up needs to know what killing feels like. They can imagine what it feels like they can imagine what it's like to be performing well and getting recognized in a public. They can imagine from their own experiences. But I think everyone should feel what bombing feels like, because bombing there have been times where, and you mentioned the longer sets. I mean, sometimes you're 10 minutes in and you realize, I'm not going to turn this one around, am I? This is just going to be 40 more minutes of eating shit. And to be able to endure that shows it's just a very strange test of character. I remember doing a show at Governor's one night. It was a great show. Everyone did well. I had a blast. And after, these two big guys come up to me and they're like, man, you guys are so funny. I don't know how you do that. I could never go up and do that. I could never do that for a job. And I said, well, what do you do for work? And the guy said, I'm a Navy SEAL. And I said, oh, you mean the job where they try to drown you during the audition process? But for him to go, he was like, I'm not just going on stage to tell jokes. I said, well, you got to be kidding me. So, but it is a strange thing. I remember years ago, I was on the phone with my mother and I just was complaining about the business frustrations. And my mother's very matter of fact, and she just said, no one makes you do this. And I thought, she's got a point. I could go get a regular job. People work in coal mines, and we're trying to argue over, I didn't get to go in the lineup where I wanted to. So you have to recognize things like that. I think that's one of the early lessons of stand-up, is that don't get too high, don't get too low, because there's always a chance you could turn it around. And if you did great, there's that moment of humility. It's right around the corner. So don't get too high on your own fumes. And it's some of the advice I give to newer comics. That's one of the benefits of performing whenever you can. No good show gets you too high. No bad show gets you too low. Because if you're only performing every now and then, when you bomb, the ones I've had that were really bad, from a decade ago, I can describe to you in detail every moment of that experience. But when they go well, you come off stage and it's so ephemeral, it dissipates so quickly. So I think that's probably that's the dragon we keep chasing. That's the high we keep going for.
Right.
That feeling of the first time you got up, or those shows where everyone's doing poorly and you go up and you get the audience and you come off and you're like, oh, like I made it happen.
Right. There's a lot that goes on in it.
Yeah.
And again, you have to love it and want to do it.
Yeah.
And the advice your mother gave you was really on the money.
It's true.
And it's true. I remember once I was at brokerage and Monty Hoffman, rest in peace. I remember I was kvetching about something. And he's like, yeah, Toots, no one said that you got to do this. No one's twisting your arm.
Yeah.
It's like, it's true. It is true. And it's okay if we complain to each other.
Yeah.
We really have no other place to go, because even
at this point,
again, you talk to any of the civilians. I mean, my own husband, I mean, he's, he only gets it so much. I mean, as time has gone on, he's seen more and more, but even still, unless you really are in this, do you understand why, the whole why? And
because it makes no sense.
It doesn't.
It doesn't make any sense. That I was at Gotham one night, and a really good comic I'm friends with, the guy who's a solid pro, stopped in, and I said, oh, I didn't know you were on the lineup tonight. And he goes, well, I'm not, but I had a corporate gig that fell through, so I figured I'd come in here. And I said, oh, what happened? He goes, well, and I don't remember the numbers, but it was like a Tuesday night, and he said, my rate for this corporate gig was like $5,000, and they would only come in with 2,500, so I had to decline. And I said, yeah, we looked at each other, and I said, but you're here to do the same thing for $20 at this club. And we laughed. He was like, yeah, it's the way, like how can the value be that flexible?
Right.
It doesn't make any sense. But
yeah. There's
in some ways, I think like, it's a
no
good
logical,
scam.
Yeah, there's no logical scale. There's no right. I mean, and just to get back to the money, I mean, we've done things all over the board, right? Where we've gotten a lot more for a lot less, more less for more, this, that, running out to Long Island to do governors on a weekend versus going out to do a corporate or a private or a fundraiser. I mean, it's all different. It's all over the board. And, and it's like, again, you got to really keep yourself grounded and remember why you're in it, because there's no like I said, there's absolutely no logic. You also teach
I do
writing, right? Is that for Jeff Lawrence?
Yeah, I do it through Laughing Buddha Comedy School. I teach group classes, and I also do one-on-one coaching on my own, more for the writing aspects. And that was something that at first, like most people who do any kind of comedy teaching, I did it. It was like, yeah, I'll make a couple of bucks, whatever. But I found that I really enjoy it, and it's tapped into some aspect of my personality that I didn't realize was unfulfilled. That this desire I had to help people improve, to help guide them to become better versions of themselves. And I didn't know that was something that was lacking in my life. But and I found that with some of the classes, that the connections you make with the students, with each other, and myself with them, that I'd see them at their graduation performances, and I would think, oh, this must be what it's like when your kid hits a home run in Little League. This is what the feeling must be like. I remember meeting with one comic, and we sat down at the diner and we went through her notes, and I suggested, because I'm a professional writer, so I mean, I do have the skills with that. Well, why don't you try this? And she was open, and she understood where I was coming from, and we talked through a lot of things. And if there's something she didn't agree with, we went over it. And we went to an open mic after. And the open mics, 6 p.m. on a Wednesday or whatever it was, it can be pretty deadly. And she went up and she did everything the way we had made the changes, and she destroyed. She got this. And when she came off stage, like, she jumped on me, like we were jumping up and down for something that happened at a Wednesday night at an open mic. And I thought, wow, that's really cool. And I don't know, I just think of my life is pretty clearly split into two parts, before stand-up and after. And the after with stand-up is much better. And if I can help someone who really wants to get there, if I can make that a little easier for them, that's a big win.
First of all, you must be a really tremendous teacher. I mean, your skill set and the way that you communicate with people, your classes must be amazing. And
They're pretty wild.
I do recommend, I can imagine, I do recommend that, if anybody is interested or you're starting out, you really should take a few classes to just get that. You have to get that going. My first class was at the comic strip with D.F. Sweetler. And it wound up really being like DF and I, because there was one other woman there, and she came half the time, so it was almost like I was getting a private from them. So that was where my first show was. And then later on, I took a couple of writing classes. I took an Eddie Brill workshop. That to this day I walked away with information, or I should say, rules that I still use to this day. Eddie Brill, for everybody that, if anybody doesn't know, is a comic, still a comedian, but he was the warm-up comic for David Letterman for many, many years. Yeah. And I'll never forget, I took his weekend class, which was, again, one of those, like, you had to do that. And it was like the rite of passage. But I'll never forget a few of the things that he said. And one of the things was about the audience. And he said, whether there's 2 people in the audience or it's a packed house, you give them the same show. And do not take it out on the people that did not come. Yep. Because people did come. And I had reiterated that to many people, that came after us about, oh, look at that and look at that. And I'm like, but these 10 people showed up. Why are you taking it out on them? So you never know.
That's a very self-conscious move.
I mean, it was great advice, because we all,
it's true.
It's so about asses in the seats, right? And I understand from the comedy club's perspective, because it's about money and it's a business, and I get that. Yeah. I get that a lot, but that is, to a certain degree, their problem, issue, whatever challenge to meet. You were hired to provide the entertainment, so that's what you have to do. And I was always also very conscientious, especially because I worked for a long time. I had my day job, my finance job, and then I did all this at night, and acting classes and all that kind of stuff. And when I did a lot of bringer shows, and I remember people would be like, well, you can't, why do you get this? Why do you get that? I go, well, first of all, these people have come, and sometimes it came from comics that I can tell never really had a substantial day job. They had sort of like odd jobs. And I was like, because I respect somebody coming to see me. And by the way, if you're going to have that lineup, with X, Y, and Z, then I'm not going to I know what that person does. I know what that person does. That doesn't motivate me to get people to come to this show, because they're going to sit through the whole show. And unless you put on a quality show, that's, it's embarrassing. And I also have respect for people's money. So, every time you come, between the 2 drinks and the tip and the whatever, it's depending on where you are, but let's just say $50, $60 a head. Sorry. And even if it's people that I know that make, well into the 6 figures, that's not the point. The point is, you're asking people to spend money, and you got
their time
and time. Yes.
Yeah. Because we know there's something about bad comedy that it takes a toll on the person experiencing it that you don't see from bad music or bad dancing or bad acting. There's something about bad comedy that just it takes something out of you. But you're right about always do the best job you can. And I think I learned that lesson the most was I was doing a show, just like a little weeknight thing. It was at the room in the back of the old Charlie O's on 8th Avenue, the Joe Franklin comedy room or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And there were 2 people in the audience. And I always tell people 2 is the smallest crowd you can perform to, because anything less than that, it's 1 person, and that's not a show. That's just you bothering a guy. It's not a show anymore. And I remember looking, and the person who booked the show, a bunch of comics went up before me, and they all were like, oh, there's nobody here. And they're all saying the same thing, all being very negative. I remember she leaned over to me and she said, "You're next." And I thought, yeah, obviously there's no one else in the room that obviously I would be next. And I went up and it was great. It was a lot of fun. So I learned that one of the reasons you always try and do your best, no matter what the size of the audience, it's not just for them. It's also for you. That may be the most fun you ever have. That you may years later just be sitting around thinking, you remember that time in that back of that room when there was just those two people? What a great time that was. So, and I've done shows for bigger crowds that were pushing a rock uphill too. So you never know. You can't make that distinction before you go up. Like we said earlier, you never know what's going to happen. That's why I don't trust people who tell me they kill all the time. I hear that, I'm a little suspicious. I think maybe you should be taking some more risks, or maybe you're just full of shit.
Right.
But that's where New York City teaches you a lesson. If you can go up and if you can kill in front of 5 strangers in a basement, man, you're building up muscles that you can't get any other way.
Right. Well, and you have to bomb. You have to have bad shows. First of all, you will never avoid it. So
it's coming for you.
If this isn't, if you get, you're too easily bruised, or we all get bruised, but we recover quicker. Then, again, this is not for you. But I quote, Zach Galifianakis had a great quote, and he said, "I have bombed as many times as I've coughed." And I thought that was a great and an honest answer. I love you on Facebook. You're hilarious. And I noticed you call people out on their shit with the killing. Like I
do. I don't. What did I say?
I love it. And so, you do it in your Joe DeVito way, and it's hilarious.
But there have been times where, I try not to get too insider-ish, but I'll put up a joke about something, because this is my life, the stand-up world. And I'll get emails from people saying, "Wow, you really put so-and-so in her place with that one." And I think that wasn't about that person. And then I'll get more emails about that person. And it'll get the same joke. We'll get people saying, "Yeah, you really showed him what's." I think I'm not going after any one particular person, but that's interesting that you would say that. Do you think I'm a shit stirrer? What have I done?
No. You're a truth teller is what you are.
Is that what I am? Oh.
I feel the same way. I like to call people out on their bullshit too. So I love it. I think it's great. No. And it's funny, and you're not being facetious. There's the element of sarcasm, which is what stand-up is. Part of it is. Yeah. No, and you never name anybody or anything like that. I couldn't. When I read it, I don't think of so and so. I think it's hilarious, and it's true.
Well, I try to always. It's always jokes that I put up. Every now and then, I'll put up. Very rarely something serious, but I don't put up long political posts. Right. I don't play that game, and I tell people keep it off my page too, because sometimes I'll put up something ripping on a public figure, and as soon as people start arguing in the comments section, I tell both of them right away, knock it off, or you're both deleted.
Right.
And because I feel like with social media, the way these people, I don't get it. I don't get this need to attack people because they don't think the same way you do. It seems it's very poisonous. And also, I posted something on Instagram just the other day. It was one of the Olsen twins married a guy who's much older, and they just look disgusting together because he's this giant, lurchy-looking guy, and she still looks like a weird changeling elf child. And there was this photo where he's hugging and kissing her, and she's grimacing. And I thought, this looks like an abduction. It just looked disgusting. So I tweeted that out saying, if you're dating someone much younger and it looks like this, please turn yourself in to the authorities immediately. And I put that up on Instagram, and some woman I don't know who found me on Instagram, who's one of these women who puts up all pictures with her tits jammed up and stuff. And she replied to it saying, well, my man's 20 years older than me, and I don't see why you should have a problem with that. And I replied, I said, I don't even care. I don't give a shit. I don't give a shit. None of this is about you. You invited yourself into this conversation. like, I don't, Ellen, this is what people don't really like. I'm not bothered. I'm not triggered. I'm not pouncing or seizing. I genuinely don't give a shit what you do with your life. So go ahead, make it whatever kind of good or shitty choices you want. I don't care. And I don't see how people get the energy to freak out about things.
Right.
Don't they have anything better to do?
No.
That's right. The answer is they don't.
No, and they have found this platform that is socially acceptable to be able to espouse their opinion. And I agree with you. So in full disclosure, when Facebook first came out in 2008 or whatever, I definitely put some political things on there. Most of it really came from because, and again, I'm not like trying to pretend like I'm a know-it-all, but I did work
excuse
on
me, my landline is ringing for some reason. Let me see what this telemarketer wants.
I'm impressed.
Hello?
All right. Well, Joe will be right back. We're not stopping this. We're not editing it. Oh, see, I knew it was going to be quick.
By the way, how big is the scam where they offer to extend your auto coverage?
It's way past one.
It's like 5 times a day. They're making zillions of dollars off of this. So anyway, I'm sorry to interrupt.
No,
please.
that's okay. I'll never figure any of that out. Well, we were all freaking out because, we were getting somebody wrote this wasn't my joke, but I'm going to say it. We got in the fall and the summer, we were getting the Chinese woman talking. And so now I think we know that she was trying to warn us about the virus. Again, not my joke. I can't remember who it was. I'm sorry. I'm not giving you credit, but so I used to freak out. I did freak out because people were saying things from a financial perspective because it was around the crisis. It was after the crash of 08. And it was and I worked in derivatives. And it just made me nuts. It was such bad, the bad people, everybody that works there, they make millions of dollars, and how dare they should give the money back. And just this crazy, and derivatives are horrible, and they steal people's money, and they're taking advantage. I mean, all of this. So I got into that. And then one day, and then there was George Bush was president then, so there was all about that. And one day, this woman emails me, and it was something in derivatives nature. She said something about Paul Krugman, who's a New York Times writer who I'm not a big fan of. Okay, I don't agree with some of the things that he says, and I think some of the things that he writes factually, at least at that time in derivatives, were incorrect. I'm not like I'm following him now. Anyway, so she went on and on. You should read Paul Krugman. And I remember the article, and it was to me, it was factually incorrect and blah, blah. This went on. It was an entire Saturday. And I'm so happy it happened back in 2008 or 9, because I realized the next day that I had spent an entire sunny day, responding to this one. And then she tells me, because first she's attacking me for being Republican, conservative, and then she comes back and she goes, well, I see that you're an independent. So now she's telling me what I am, which is because I had no idea. I needed her to guide me. I don't know who she is. And this just went on. And that moment, that was like, okay, this is crazy. I cannot do that. So I sort of made a policy not to do it. Not that, a few haven't slipped past the goalie. My big one, really, honestly, more has been de Blasio, because I am a native New Yorker, very territorial about this city. And the thing with him is, though, we're all pretty much in agreement that he is inept. Right, left, it doesn't matter. So we're all on the same page. And again, and I do try to make it, somewhat funny. But for the most part, I also have laid low. I just try to post funny things. I'm very self-deprecating because there's a lot to make fun of. And so I put that kind of stuff out there. And we use it to test out jokes. I'm not going to lie, see
Sure. Oh, yeah.
how that sounds. And then I'll take it to the stage and whatnot, because it can suck you in. And I agree with you. And you and I know, mutual people that will sit there and it'll just go on and on and on. Listen, I have my opinions, and opinions are based on life experience, what you know, what you don't know. I don't profess to be always right. And that's it. And just respect it and just move on. I also had another instance early on in Facebook where two people disagreed. It was political, and it was again around the George Bush time. And then I got an email. It was two guys. And I got an email from one saying that the other one was threatening him and that he was going to kick his ass and blah, blah, blah. I go, okay, let's stop right here. Call me old-fashioned, but real threats really happen face-to-face, because you live in Chicago and they live in Florida. And I highly doubt that they're going to fly to your house to kick your ass or whatever. So stop being such
What are they going to have? They're going to have a duel?
Yeah, right.
Come on.
So it got crazy. So that was a whole nother thing. So if I do write something where I think people are going to, I always say, be nice to, like sometimes I ask for an opinion and I go, an opinion, be nice to each other. And then I just delete it. I don't even, if there is something arrogant, I do. And honestly, it's a lot less because of what we manage what you put up there. So I completely agree with you. But you and I, because of our timing, we came into this business before social media. So we've lived through this transition. And it's really been an interesting, it's good and evil, like everything else. And for me, at least the evil part is that, I'll watch, that person booked that room, I can't get in there, my insecurities all kick in, I'm not funny, and I go on all this stuff. Plus, as a woman, I have a whole nother thing with diet and exercise and fitness Instagrams that I see. So it's like, I'll never have that body. And let me try the intermittent fast. Oh my God, I'm starving. I hate this. Why can't I do keto? I have no strength against bread. It's my kryptonite. And all. So there's all that. I'm every year with resolutions, I try to say to myself, less social media. Now it's I do daily resolutions, less social media today, less social media today.
Especially now. I used to look at social media as an unfortunate aspect of the way we communicate with each other. But now with the lockdown, it's the only way we communicate with each other.
Right.
So the bad habits that people have ingrained in that, it's getting harder and harder to separate it out from the way people should communicate and the way they actually are communicating. And I see a lot of it as just a real loss of, it's not just a loss of self-control, but it's a celebration of a loss of self-control, that the more you freak out, the higher you score in whatever social capital you're hoping to accumulate, that then the faster and more explicitly nasty and hyper emotional you are, you get rewarded for it. And it's just not something I'm interested in. And I see, look, I've lost some friends. I don't even know if I would call them friends now. I would call them acquaintances or connections. And I don't lament it because I don't go after people. I don't go looking for trouble. But some of them, you just want to say, like, don't you have any control over your emotions? Like, look, let's just move on to something else or whatever it was that we used to have in common. And if they can't do that, I guess they got to go. And I've felt that, especially with the stuff that I've done on Fox News, where I don't talk a lot of politics in my act, but I guess over the years, I looked at the way I felt about things and I listened, and I kind of found out I'm a libertarian. I certainly didn't pursue that. That just seemed to be what my views and orientation added up to be. But that was so strange. Like sometimes a clip of mine of something I would say on Fox News would air, and I would get nasty messages from people saying, you right-wing Nazi, and then the same clip would get someone saying, you liberal New York homo. And I would think, how could the same thing that I've said inspired these completely different, ridiculous reactions? So You know what I think is great, Ellen? It's muting people. Don't block them because that's what they want. Just mute them, because then I really like to picture them going yelling and screaming, and I can't hear them because I don't give them the satisfaction.
So, yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, do you follow Michael Malice?
No, who is that?
Oh, he's so funny. He's another like libertarian-ish, more he says he's an anarchist, but he's a troublemaker and he's really funny. He's a writer. He wrote a great book about Kim Jong-il. Like he's a real smart dude. And he likes to deliberately troll people on Twitter. He'll just put up an absurd opinion. And if you know him, you know what he's doing. And people engage in these arguments. And you know, he told me what he'll do sometimes is he'll post these ridiculous reactions. And I said, well, what do you do? And he goes, I'll post, well said. It just like, it doesn't mean anything for him to say that. But his new thing that he says now is that when people say, they seem to think it's a point of honor to say, I went to Michael Malice and he didn't respond. Doesn't it show? And he would say, what makes you think you're entitled to a response? It's true.
Right.
They're not. No one has a claim to my time. It doesn't matter what they say. I don't care if they demand go fuck yourself. Like, you've offered me nothing. I'm not interested. You're a grain of sand. You're a speck of dust. Go on with your life and be happy. But it doesn't involve me, and I won't let it involve me. And have you heard of Newsfeed Eradicator?
No.
It's an extension for the Chrome and Firefox browsers for Facebook. And what it does is, when you go to your home on Facebook, no one shows up in your news feed. It's just a single motivational quote.
Really?
So it's beautiful because I don't get dragged in. I don't look at people's opinions and get annoyed. If I want to see what they're up to, I can go to their page. But that right there must have lowered my blood pressure a couple of points right there.
That's a great piece of advice. I'm definitely going to do that. Because scrolling through Facebook it's first of all, now with all this COVID and Corona, it's very, some of it of course is very depressing, very tragic, not to take that away, but just again, everybody's opinion now where, if you wear a mask, you don't wear a mask, you go out, this and that. I'm going to tell you what we did yesterday. Right. And we're now, as we record this, we are 2 months over 2 months, the 9th week, into this thing. And I want to ask you your opinion as well. Yesterday, we went up, my husband and I went up to my cousins in Westchester, the beautiful house, the 3 boys. I'm the godmother, and I haven't seen them really since Christmas Eve. And I talked on the phone, but, and because I said, we want to come see you, how you guys with the social, and she's like, no, we're fine. And, again, we're, now that the curve flattened, we went up there 6 weeks ago, of course. Yeah. And we wound up going up. We walked in with our masks, but I got to tell you, afterward, we took them off. I mean, nobody kissed and hugged. Nobody was on top of each other. But I wouldn't say we were always 6 feet apart and stuff. And then we ordered food, we drank wine. My husband played basketball with the, 2 of the boys, and I slid down the slide, and boy, did it feel so good, and I'm just like, this is ridiculous. Look, I'm not, nobody's an expert. No one's a scientist. There's so many unknowns, all this other kind of stuff. I just feel right now where we are right this second. And I realize there's no hindsight. There's no this. People said things and it was wrong, and I get it. And I think you get a haircut on that. You get an adjustment. That's okay. That's okay. Whether it's a politician I like or I dislike, I get it. But here, now we're here. We're here. And I think we got to start getting back in phases, whatever it is. Let's have a plan. Let's have a game plan, and as time will go on, they will figure out what the best combination of things are. The whole thing with the vaccine, I don't know. Look, I'm not a huge vaccine person. That doesn't mean if I had to take it, I would do it. I just think in terms of the flu, I'm not talking about the measles, mumps, I don't know any of that, but because these flu vaccines have shown that they're always 1 or 2 strains behind. So, they're not full proof. Even if it just said if it was full proof, then that's a whole different situation. But I think there was a bit of hysteria. But to get back to Facebook, now we've got a new divide. The people. Yeah. Somebody said the other day, "Why are people in the city? Why are they driving? Why are the people?" It's like, what do you mean? Why are they? First of all, you don't know where they're going. Whether they pay, you have no idea. Like, what does that mean? There's clearly less cars, so I don't know. It's not like there's a big traffic jam on Fifth Avenue. So what? The people are in the streets. People they didn't wear their mask. I was talking to, I actually went Saturday too. We went up to the chiropractor and he had the best explanation for the mask. He said, and you probably know this, but the mask is to protect other people, because if you and you're asymptomatic, let's say you had it, you didn't know, which is great, right? I think that's supposed to be a good thing. And then you're near somebody and then whatever little spit or whatever gets on them, however it does. And then they catch it, and then, they react in a different way, because everybody's reacting to this differently. And I want to say one more thing, too. We were talking about in the beginning of the show, which I was sort of like alluding to this, is, we are getting old. We're not old, but we're getting older, and which is a gift. And you have to take care of yourself. And like you, I wish I did these things the way that I practice what I do now. I wish I did in my 20s. But anyway. But when you're in your 20s, you think you're infallible and nothing's ever going to happen. And you recover from things super, super quickly, and you don't know as much. And of course, we don't have all this information. But all the more reason, to me, I hope that for the people that, and again, I'm not picking or whatever, but the overweight, the smokers, the drinkers, the this, and that, the thing, to take stock and say, look, I need a strong immune system to be able to fight this, because it's not just the elderly, it's also not each case, of course. Then there's those tragic, there's the tragic cases, but of people that have, the compromised immune system, which is, all of those things that you think that if you just take a pill for, that's going to keep it at bay. So, but it's been a really, it's just been a really crazy time. But tell me how has it been for you? You've been giving yourself a little more liberties and going out and
well, see, I'm doing this by myself, which is a drag. It gets lonely. And it's so strange too. And I'm sitting here looking out. It's a beautiful day out. I'm going to go for a walk in a bit. I'm going to put my mask on and go for a stroll because, obviously it's not healthy to stay indoors all the time. I feel like we're all figuring out what are our trade-offs, because what this is another, like every other issue now, it has to be political, especially, and this is important, but political in the sense that whatever the topic is, everybody now lets you know which tribe they're in, which side they're on. And it doesn't really have much to do with whatever the issue is, other than declaring where you have your allegiance. And I feel that I hear what people are saying, and I think, well, that's part of it, but you can also compromise and do a little bit of the other side. You don't need to stamp your feet and say, no, because I'm this, I refuse to do that. Well, if you do that, they automatically go to murder. You're a murderer. And it's to me, I don't like these purely emotional responses to things. So for me, until we get this under control, I don't mind wearing a mask to go into a store, put on a mask, stay a few feet away from each other. It's probably good business anyway to do that. But I went shopping last week. There's a guy in the market. He's got his mask down with his nose sticking out. He's leaning on everything. He won't shut the fuck up. He's getting close to people because he's not. And Ellen, I've noticed myself looking around for something, like I wanted to pick up something and hit him with it. It was making me so angry. I would have been less angry if he said, I'm not wearing a mask, than someone who's so stupid they can't figure out how to make a mask work. That's what bothered me, was his stupidity. That if he just said, I'm not wearing a mask, I'm going to go somewhere else. Okay, that's fine. I may not agree with it, but I can understand where you're coming from. So, yeah, I think we're all figuring out what our level of acceptable risk is, because look, if it's so, should we not do anything and hope for herd immunity in the best? Okay. Should we be walking around in spacesuits because it can enter through your eyes and it's being sprayed? Well, if that's the case, there's kind of nothing you can really do about it. You can't hide yourself forever. So to me, it seems logical that there's some sort of combination of these things. There's some sort of middle ground that balances risk with people's rights. But people don't want to hear that. And I'm not saying I have the solution, but at least I'm trying to figure out in my own life, okay, I'm going to use my hand sanitizer. I'm going to not touch my face. I'm going to wash. I would love to visit my parents, but I can't because they're older. And I have to make that trade-off. So I don't know what's going to happen, but I did notice about a week ago that there was some sort of turning point where people realized what we're doing now can't go on, that you can't just shut everything down. And of course, the chance to use this as a very grotesque power grab, that immediately manifested itself. That petty tyrants, it was their moment to shine for the Karens of the world. We call them Karens now, the squealers and the narcs. I have a friend named Karen, and she told me she hates that is now the name for a complaining white woman. And of course I thought, well, you would say that, wouldn't you? Very on brand for her. So yeah, it's strange because I don't know what's going to happen. I do feel like personally, I'm not coming out of this the same or worse. I've been blessed that I'm healthy. Most of the people I know and love are healthy. I'm not going to come out of this a lesser person. So I'm using this time, this time to physically correct myself, to do some good work, to reach out to people I haven't talked to in a while. What makes it a real bummer is that you can't connect with people who are struggling. I would love to be able to deliver food to somebody, but I'm not secure enough to do that. I would love, like I have a new neighbor who's older, and I saw her fumbling with the door, and my first instinct was to say, can I help you with the door? And I just felt like maybe I'm not supposed to do that. And I don't like that. Or that when I'm walking down the street in my little neighborhood and I see someone approaching, and even if we're both wearing masks, we kind of lower our head and step away. And I think, oh, that's terrible. I mean, can't even smile at somebody. So those are some costs. Once we get the dire health issues under control and the also dire economic issues, I think there's going to be a lot of PTSD we're going to have to deal with. And that's for regular people. Forget about the people who work in hospitals. I mean, God, what they're going through.
Right.
It's awful. Although I don't think these nurses in the other departments doing these TikTok videos are doing anyone any favors. I mean, I have a friend, she's a nurse and she works in an assisted care facility. And the horror story she's telling me, and I said to her, what about these women twerking and sticking things? And she's like, they're not helping because they make people see that and they think, oh, well, I don't have to listen to the experts.
Right.
But on the other hand, my friend who at work is essentially wearing a spacesuit and trying to keep people alive. I said to her, well, what about the vaccine? She said, untested vaccine? No way am I taking that. So I think, well, it's too early to tell, right?
Right. No, I hear you. And in terms of all of the scientists, we've, at least in this country, it seems like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but, Dr. Fauci has been the one that's taken the lead. Yeah. And I realize he's had a lot of experience in the AIDS epidemic and all that, and I respect that. But as we also know, he has been incorrect.
Yeah.
And I think it's important. We were talking about this yesterday, so I'm sort of reiterating one of our dinner conversations. And it'd be nice because there are these different scientists, and there are scientists on the other end, and it'd be nice to have them in a room and sort of like argue or point out, whatever their viewpoint.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's because it's not black and white, and we've never done this before, and this is a new virus. So, because I think we really need to get, in terms of the scientists in this country, what we're doing in this country, a little bit more together with some like different viewpoints. So the other day when Fauci was in front of Congress and he said because they were, I forgot what the question was exactly, but he said, I'm not an economist, I'm a scientist. And I think that was like one of the most honest answers. So, but we've sort of relied on him, which has affected the economy. And then, and there is that argument about, okay, so now there's 26 million people unemployed and all these small businesses and, and what's going to happen to these people and their mental health and financial health. So,
well, you're right. Well, think about where he comes from. If you're an epidemiologist and you want to give the answer that's going to be the most fail-safe answer, you would probably say something like, nobody go anywhere with any other contact until we have a cure. Now, but that would be the most logical answer for you to give. That would be the safest answer for you to give. That would be the closest to 100% correct. Just as if you were someone who was an economist, you might say, open everything up and let it rip and let things sort things out. So you have to balance these things out. Again, look, I'm a stand-up comic. What the hell do I know about anything? But I'm trying to look at these things and say, well, there's one side that says, never believe the government under any circumstances. And then there's the other side that says, you want to kill grandma. And I think, but, look at the times we live in. Over the past 4 years, how could you look a conspiracy theorist in the face and say, that's nuts? I mean, look what reality is, And I think also people forget that we've been extremely spoiled in that things in the world have been very good and getting better for a while. Even for people at the worldwide poverty has been getting good, and death rates, even in the worst places in the world, have been getting incrementally better. And in the blessed parts of the world, like where we are fortunate enough to live, come on, we have an obesity problem. Millions of years of humanity to get us to the point where we're getting too fat. That had never happened before. So we've been living in luxury. People forget that the natural condition of things is death, disease, and toil. We've only been able to postpone that and put that off and get into a comfort zone for a few generations. A little tiny piece at the end of that number line of humanity. So the good news is, I think we'll be able to figure something out. But other than that, I guess, I always think there's a quote, it's attributed to one of Mao's generals. And they said to him, what do you think were the main results of the French Revolution? And he said, too soon to tell. And I think we won't really know until afterward when we're looking back, because that's kind of how history works. And every now and then someone has some foresight and some good luck, but we just won't know.
Right. What do you think the state of comedy is going to be? And how are you going to navigate yourself? Like, do you have a game plan? Or because I also thought when this lockdown happened, I'm not saying I was excited, but, in my mind, it was more like a 2-week thing. And I was like, well, I'll learn a language. I'll learn how to play guitar. I'm gonna put together my wedding album, even though I got married 11 years ago. I'll find it's on the floor. I'm gonna bake. I haven't. I still haven't dusted my bedroom, and that's been going on for years. So I haven't done any of that. But I did. I said I wanted to be productive, and I know I've been a little productive, but not like what I wanted to be, because I start getting sucked in. So now I'm going to do your thing with the quote. Well, but what do you think about comedy? Let me hear your opinion.
Okay, I think I hate this expression, the new normal, so I'm not going to use that, but I think when we come out of this, it won't be like waking up from a dream and we just pick up where we left off. I don't think that's going to happen because it's a traumatic experience, and it's going to force us to have to do some very basic things differently. Now, having said that, I was sitting down the other day doing my morning writing, and I thought, okay, if that's the worst case scenario, then what? And if you look at it that way, you have to release everything that you've done previously because it just doesn't apply anymore. So there's going to be some kind of opportunity for something new that comes out of this. I don't know what that is yet, but I think we have to kind of think that way. And to bring it down, it's a very macro statement. To make a micro version of that, these Zoom shows. I did a Zoom comedy show Saturday night. I made a couple of bucks and it was pretty fun. And I felt like I was talking to another comic and we said a Zoom show can't just be you standing against a fake brick wall telling jokes, because they can go watch that on Netflix. They can watch Seinfeld do that. They don't need to watch you do that. So what can you do using Zoom that makes it particular to that experience? Because stand-up is an experience. It's a connection with the audience. So then I thought, well, what if I did funny backgrounds on Zoom? And that seemed to work. Or what if, I'm seeing these people in their homes, and what if you click on that couple and talk about what's happening in their kitchen right then? So that's a way to adapt. And I don't think that's going to go away. That'll just be a different kind of show. Just like how podcasts have blown up. And people who started podcasts early, look at the position they're in now.
Right.
Because I really think that people, when we come out of the acute crisis, I think live stand-up is going to take a long time to recover. And I think that in culture, when someone hears that someone's a comedian, they're not going to picture someone on a stage holding a microphone with a brick wall behind them in front of an audience. They're going to picture someone who makes TikTok videos, who has a podcast, who does stuff on YouTube. And I think we've been heading in that direction for a while.
Right, right.
So, but it's just like anything else. There's going to be people who are really good at it, people who get it, and there's going to be a whole lot of other crap from people because there's no barrier to entry to that. So I don't know what that means for people like us who work as stand-up comics. I'm very grateful that I have the teaching aspect to rely on for now. I'm not pessimistic long-term, but I'm not optimistic short-term, because I just don't see how the previous model comes right back, particularly in the New York City clubs, where a New York City club at 30% capacity, it's not even 30% of the previous experience. It's a completely different thing, and I don't know if it's going to be a successful thing.
All these businesses, whether it's stand-up comedy or anything else,
Yeah.
they have a break-even point. And if they cannot meet that break-even point, they're not going to be around. So
Yeah. They're restaurants, essentially. They're bars.
Right. And we just happen to be there. Right. So
part of it, Ellen, too, is that I almost feel a little bit of guilt that almost 20 years into this and professional for 15 or whatever of that. If I have to go do something else that's around it, I'm kind of cool with that. I'll miss it, but I'm looking at what other people are going through, and not even just health-wise and that kind of loss, but with their businesses going under. I send whatever karma we need to them. Send it to the barbers. Send it to the guy who owns the pizza place, or the woman who owns her own business. Or that's where I get angry with people who they don't get it, where they say things like, why do we need the barbershops to be open? Let your hair grow out. To me, it's because I want to make sure my barber doesn't lose his home. I want to go give him money. I want him to make a living. It's not because I care about obviously I don't care about my haircut. You see what I've done to myself in here. So, but again, these are all things that we have to weigh them, and you have to keep in mind that we can't look at this situation and say, oh, it's like this other time, because there is no other time. Elements of it are like the financial crisis. Elements of it are like 9/11. Elements of it are like the AIDS crisis. Elements of it are like whatever the 1918 pandemic was like. But it's its own thing. It's going to require its own way of looking at it and its own solution.
Right, right. I agree with everything that you're saying. I think as well, I'm not optimistic in the short term. And when I say short term, I say next 12 months. Anything that, if you look at every economic crisis, that fall is quick, and it's hard to get the climb back up is when it is much, much slower.
It's not a V.
Right. Just like the Dow. Once that crashes, that's a long climb back up, or the NASDAQ, whatever. So I think that that's going to really take some time, because the business model is, and this goes, by the way, for fundraisers, any of that we do, right? It's all about how do we get as many people in a room, because we want to make the most money. That's what it's all about. So I've done I've done a couple of the free Zoom shows from our,
Mhm.
some of our friends, and then I've done 3 or 4 paid shows. The first one,
Okay.
I will tell you full disclosure, was after like the first week or two. That was, I think it was dual. Like I couldn't, I was trying to maneuver
Mhm.
my way. It was just a family and they wanted to do something
Mhm.
fun. They decided they were in the Hamptons. They got a Thanksgiving dinner and then they had a magician for an hour before me on Zoom and then me. So it's, 9:30 Saturday night. They're all tryptophan out. They've had a
Mhm.
magician already. And now I am on Zoom trying to make this happen. So,
Yeah.
and the signal was bad. So it was all of that, and
Yep.
after that I was like, oh my, how is
Mm.
this going to work? This is crazy. And then I did, and then again I've done some of the ones with our friends, which has been good. And then I did a baby shower last weekend, or the weekend before, and that
Mhm.
was great. And then I did something Friday night, a fundraiser. They're raising money for like a food pantry, and
Yeah.
that was great. And those 2 people were a lot more organized. So it just
Yeah.
sort of like anything else. So it's really weird.
Mhm.
It's almost like the same result if it were live, that the
You just
organization,
have to figure out the way to do it.
wanting to do it versus listen, we're stuck in the house, that kind of thing. So it made sense. But for us, it's a different atmosphere. It's a different
Mm.
animal. It's completely different, and I've got the Zoom and I'm trying to look into the camera
Yeah.
in my computer, but I've got the TV, like all this kind of stuff. So I hear you, but I
Mm.
definitely think that that's going to be the new norm for some of these things, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't know, but I mean, when organizations, still people are
Mhm.
still going to need to raise money, and maybe it will be these Zoom shows. I don't know, or they'll have a fundraiser with the 50
Mhm.
people that they're allotted, and they'll get a comic, and instead of paying the comic, and I'm just using a hypothetical,
Yeah.
instead of having $1,000 comedy budget, they'll have a $200 comedy budget.
Yeah.
Whatever it
But
is. But at the end of the day, everybody's going to try to
yeah.
figure out how they're going to make money.
And it's so funny you mention this because the show that I did Saturday, the previous attempt they had in entertainment was to have a Zoom show with a magician. I don't know why magician. To me, it seems like magician is harder because a trick when you're not there, it almost doesn't happen. I thought it would be funny that every time you were a magician, but every time you did the trick, you turned you turned the camera and you clearly were messing around or grabbing a pre-made one. Yeah, but there's going to be things that work in the Zoom format that we didn't realize until we started to do them. It seems like shorter shows because people's attention spans are
Right.
shorter. I noticed with Zoom teaching is that it's harder to command their attention because when we're in a physical room, I can use my presence to keep them focused. But they're home, they're sitting in a chair, like they're in their home, they're in their comfort zone. So it'll take a little playing around, but we'll figure it out. It's just going to be a different way of doing it. I don't know. I think you just have to stay open.
Yeah. I like you.
Yeah.
I'm going to knock on wood. We're going to be okay. We're
Yeah.
resilient. We're smart. We'll go do something else, possibly,
Mhm.
whatever. We have other skill sets. We'll figure it out. I agree with you. I wake up. I try to remember every day, to be grateful. And as long as nobody in my immediate family and all that,
Yeah.
you just like, okay. But in terms of the hierarchy of
Mhm.
businesses, to me, from a financial perspective, entertainment is going to be one of the last things people will spend
Sure.
money on because entertainment is about disposable income. So,
Mhm.
they're going to first go and take care of their house and their car and their kid and their this and their that. And, blah, 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 blah. And even the landscape of a vacation now is going to be completely different. I mean, this summer's
Yeah.
vacations for people are going to be a whole lot different than there were.
Your vacation will be you went outside.
Pardon?
Your vacation will be that you went outside.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
Even think of the different reactions to this one statement. Wow, the place is packed.
Right.
Now, a couple months ago, you would have thought, great. And now you hear that and you're gripped with fear.
Right. But I
It's the
agree.
same
Yeah,
statement.
I do agree with you too, because I think no matter what side of the fence you are on,
Mm.
the natives are getting restless. So here,
Yeah.
even in,
Something's got to give.
we'll call it liberal New York, where it's more about,
Yeah.
people had it sort of like their one, more of a one perspective. Now it's just like, what do you mean I can't go outside? What do you mean I can't go out on a job? What do you mean you're going to fine me because I'm being served? I mean,
Yeah.
I just don't understand who's making some of these economic decisions.
Yeah.
You have to weigh what are the chances of somebody getting something if you've got a bar that wants to serve people
Mm-hmm.
and they're outside spread apart, or a beach.
And yet the subway is still running. Like you couldn't
That is the
come
one,
up with a better way to deliver the disease.
that is the one place
Hmm.
that I have not been on, and that
Yeah.
I am the most fearful. I mean, I would take the bus before at this point, but sometimes
Sure.
and I am a huge subway person. I love the subway, and when it's
Yeah.
working, to me, it's the best. I don't know how that's going to happen, and the homeless problem and all that. Just so everybody knows, that was horrific before.
Yeah.
And nothing has
They
been
let it go
done.
for too long.
And that's when I ream into my big thing with De Blasio, which again I think we can all agree, he's done nothing, dead on arrival.
Yeah, he's terrible.
Like nothing, absolutely, just like it was gonna go away. Of course, it's gotten worse. So, I can talk to you all day.
I know, we're just getting started. Huh?
You're just a great guy. You're a great guy. You're a smart
you're the
guy.
best.
You're a funny guy. I always have mad respect for you. You're hard.
I'm very handsome too. I noticed you left that out.
I love you. You're adorable. With the beard, without the beard.
Oh yeah.
And who knows? Maybe you'll be able to share the quarantine with somebody.
That's that was. I never thought about that with the dating. That make sure you pair up to get through a worldwide pandemic with some. It's like shit. That should have been at the top of the list. But hey, you know what? Next time when the bubonic plague comes swinging around.
Well, let me just tell you, my husband and I, we ran out of things to talk about after the first. I mean, we were done. We went through each other's 8th grade autograph book, our memories. We talked about financial planning, and we did the whole thing. We're done. We're like, we got nothing. So he was, I think, more scared about being locked up with me for 2 weeks than he was about getting
with good cause.
Right, because he's like, the virus, probably recover. We be with you, like that will be permanent damage. I'm not quite sure we'll be able to get, but it's been interesting. He was a little freaked out in the beginning.
Yeah.
But anyway, I think he's calmed down. He's got his own business, so in some ways, of course, there's certain things that were not able to go forward. He was going to, he's got this business, he manufactures orthotics. On one hand, there was a lot of things that were down the pike that had to get stopped, that were stopped. But in the same token, he's also an online presence. He's e-commerce, so that that kind of keeps going. But anyway, it really is. It's just a whole different world, and but I'm glad that we got to do this, and we got to get to know you. Give us all your social media.
Sure. On Instagram and Twitter, it's at Joe DeVito Comedy. I'm more active on Twitter. I try to put up a joke or two every day. And joedevito.com is the website. And this is something pretty cool. I recorded a special for Dry Bar Comedy, and they're clean comedy specials. So if you go to drybarcomedy.com/Joe D and you get the app, you can watch a 40-minute clean special from me. And they have tons in their archives, a lot of really fun comics too.
Oh, I highly recommend everybody do. We're going to do that. Actually, I think
you'll like it.
Oh, I know I like it. And the thing with Dry Bar, Two things I realized just scrolling through social media. One, I'm the only comic that's never done a dry bar special. And two, I'm the only comic that's never met Danny Aiello. And those things will always stick with me. Anyway, and it's DeVito, D-E-V-I.
D-E-V-I-T-O, yes.
Yes. And then also, you're still doing things on Fox, right? I mean, everybody's doing.
I haven't yet, but I imagine once, I haven't zoomed in or Skyped into anything, but once things, however we sort that out, I'll either be on remotely or in studio on Greg Gutfeld's show.
Right.
And
which we love.
It's a great show.
Yeah, I did Red Eye once many years ago, and then I know Greg. We've met.
Yeah,
but we
very successful.
He's very funny. He's very funny. I love seeing you. I get very excited when I see you on. I plant myself. I sit down, and my husband's a big fan too. So thank you so much. Thank you.
Right on. Thank you.
Hang on. We're going to cut it. We're going to cut it here. And then
awesome.
I'm going to talk for a second. I am Ellen Karras. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Greek Chick Comic, or on Facebook, Ellen Karras, Greek Goddess of Comedy, or my website, ellenkarras.com, ELLENKARIS.com. And you can catch all my other podcasts as well as this one on the website or on Libsyn. We're on iTunes. We're on all the podcast platforms. So check us out. Everybody has time, right? All right. Thank you so much.